know, that insulin production very stable or as stable as she can. So I think all of those factors, doing your logs, calculating, marking, making sure she balances her proteins to her oils and her carbohydrates, eating lean proteins that are low in saturated fat, eating high fiber foods that help to control insulin production, and doing the low saturated fat and the good unsaturated oils. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. I don't know that people can do that all by themselves. It's hard work. She's done it.
You ever stop and congratulate yourself? And say
Yeah.
No, no.
She just plows ahead. Barbara's real practical.
I don't really stop to think. It's just, you know, always looking for a way to improve it, so.
Right. So it takes application, and the one thing that is important too, and I think, did you know about the glycemic index, Barb, before you came in?
Not before I came to you.
Well, the glycemic index of foods is a rating scale for foods, Kurt, and it basically, on a scale of 0 to 100, shows you what foods really help to regulate or stabilize insulin production and what foods will create a reaction where you produce too much insulin or not enough insulin. So basically what you have are foods that are very high in sugars naturally occurring, like carrots and bananas. And processed foods are very high in the glycemic index, will evoke a greater insulin response. And the foods that are lower in the glycemic index, like our proteins and our seeds and our nuts and our high fiber foods like whole grains, you know, that the very dense grains that break your toe, the kind of breads if you drop them they hurt. Those kinds of grains will all help to stabilize glycemic index. And the most important thing is those three food groups mixed with oils, which have a neutral effect on insulin, will in fact, blended together, help to regulate insulin even more efficiently.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. You're nodding your head with knowledge. See, that's the one thing I must admit, and I'm sure, and it's something that I've, through inculcation, have tried to tell people that when you go to Deborah, you learn.
Definitely, absolutely.
And so you walk away empowered as well as helped. And it sounds like as you're shaking your head, I'm going, really? What? You know, so
right, she's like a mini nutritionist. And
that's incredible.
It's really important, Kurt, like you say, you learn. You know, there's no shortcut to nutrition education. There's not. I've tried it. You know, I tried having people not do food logs, but unless someone really documents what they do, then old habits will supersede and they sneak back in. You end up going, people go, oh, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but if they haven't logged it, and you tell them, okay, give me a one-day recall, they're right back to like that 60–80% carbohydrate, low protein and no fat. I mean, that's what Americans consume because we've had it pounded in our heads, you know, that we're not supposed to eat fats and oils. You know, we're not supposed to eat a lot of protein because it's too saturated. We're supposed to eat carbohydrates because there's no fat. Well, we're seeing hypothyroid, lots of blood sugar, you know, hypoglycemia and diabetes popping up all over the place. Those diseases or those health conditions will help preempt or set the stage for other problems later on. They lower immunity and they make you more suspect or more, you know, fallible towards developing things like cancer or, you know, a full-blown onset of some particular disease, call it leukemia or whatever. But you need to really make sure that you balance your body chemistry when you're young, like Barbara's age. Otherwise, growing older is going to be hellacious. It's going to be very problematic. So, yeah, you have to educate, educate, educate. It's a lot of work, but it's fun because now she knows her body.
And it seems to be working. How do you feel?
I definitely feel at least, if not 100% better, just about 100% better. I mean, my energy level has greatly increased. I just really remember just really feeling really lethargic in the morning and almost like I had a headache and just kind of like walking with my shoulders hunched, just, you know, dragging all the time. And I definitely feel that my lifestyle is easier, learning about the my new diet that Deborah has set for me, and I have more energy to exercise and just really make it through the day. I mean, the energy was my major problem.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. And you look fine. You look well. My goodness, my goodness. Deborah, what other tests do you find useful for assessing deficiencies such as for minerals, which are so vital to regulating the pancreas and endocrine system?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, we have, you know, the blood test, the standardized chem screen, which gives us a glucose reading, and that's very handy. And of course, you do the home self-prick test, right? How often do you use that?
Do it 4 or 5 times a day.
You do.
So every meal before bed, and then depending on exercise, before and after exercise.
And that's another good thing to know, that she needs to eat before she exercises to really maintain stability, or not let, you know, more than 2 or 3 hours go if you're going to
Right.
exercise. You better eat something before you exercise.
Now, is that a good rule of thumb with everyone, or
Well, it's
specifically with diabetics? Or?
I find that for people who don't have particular health concerns, eating lightly before they do eat helps them to actually burn more fat. Not a lot, but eating something, if nothing else, than a good protein drink, you know, which is real easy on the gut, and it does help to regulate insulin. So you don't end up burning insulin, you go longer and stronger, especially if your workouts are going to go over 50, 60 minutes. And being diabetic, it's really important that she has enough fuel in her tank. You know,
Oh, that's
otherwise she will
interesting.
burn insulin after 60 minutes or 70 minutes, and that's very dangerous. You can do that even if you're not diabetic. You end up becoming very weak, fatigued, you get chilled after you exercise, and that's a sign that you're burning something other than fat. Not good.
Okay, interesting.
So the other test that we utilized was the hair tissue mineral analysis. And again, Barbara, I'm sorry I left it there, but I know your calcium was high, wasn't it?
It's the calcium,
Copper
copper, aluminum.
and aluminum were all high. And that test, basically, in her selenium, her chromium was very low, your manganese was low, your iron was low, and magnesium.
You're talking Greek to us. What did we? Whoa, wait, what?
Okay, these are trace minerals, Kurt.
Okay, trace
and
minerals.
The body, of course, is made up of trace minerals. So there are different trace minerals in varying amounts.
Now, these are minerals you brought with you to show us?
They're in her tissues.
Oh, in your tissue. I see.
Yes, yes. So what we do is we basically take a hair sample and we test the hair, and the hair then gives me a reflection of what she has in her storage tank, which is the tissue in the body, for the past 10 years. So if there are extreme deficiencies, you'll see, especially in diabetics, they're very low in selenium, in chromium, and manganese.
I see.
Also hypothyroid, selenium, manganese, and magnesium are all necessary for thyroid activity, and she also has that. So all of those values were needed, were exceptionally low. Copper is a blocker if there's a high amount of copper, and you had high copper. And that copper blocks, of course, her chromium and her selenium. And then she also had high aluminum, which is a toxic heavy metal. And aluminum is a bully. He's like the 12-year-old who looks like he's 16 in the playground. You know, he occupies a lot of space. He comes along, pushes everybody else out of the way. So aluminum and calcium are kind of what we call bully. One is a toxic mineral, and one is just a very dense. Calcium is a very dense mineral, and it actually blocks thyroid activity. So she had a high level of calcium too, which needs to be driven down. And the aluminum, of course, you know, creates all kinds of problems. It deposits in the heart, it deposits in the adrenals and the brain. So you need to get aluminum out of the system because they're such dense minerals, they attract more of the same. So it's really, really important to get those down balanced, and you do that by putting in chelating agents. Chelating agents are other minerals and or vitamin C and or protein foods like methionine, cysteine, and cysteine that bind those heavier calciums, or things like aluminum, drag them to the liver kicking and screaming because they don't want to go bye-bye, they want to stay in the system. And then you have to bind them in the liver and pull them out of the GI tract.
I see.
And that takes about a year. I mean, depending on how high. Her calcium, I think, was 100 and something.
So how long has she been coming?
6 months.
6 months. Okay.
So we'll retest her hair shortly. I retest every 6 months. I don't like to do it before then, because once you start moving heavy metals out and around the body, if you take the test within 3 to 4 months, you might see some of those levels actually elevated, just like cholesterol. If you
Oh, I
test
see.
too soon, those values go up because they're circulating. They're free. They're not bound in tissue. So in 6 months, though, you normally see some really good affected changes. You'll see some of those trace minerals coming up. So now what she's doing is she's taking a lot of supplements, basically in specific amounts, to pull up the little weaker minerals that she's missing. And that also helps to displace the ones she has too much of. So it's a very good test for diabetics. It's a very good test for hypothyroid.
I also wanted to add to that the overall reading after I went back and had the analysis done. It was interesting to find out that the high calcium and the high aluminum and the deficiencies I had all had a part interplaying with my thyroid, and perhaps if I had taken the test before I had been treated for my hyperthyroid.
It could have offset the onset of diabetes.
Right.
That's an important statement. That's a very important statement.
well, that's a good point because there is a relationship. People are like, oh, if I have one disease, I can't get another. But you know, once you get one, it's a downward spiral. It's like you're just suspect and you're at risk for developing the next and the next. That's like when I tell people, you know, I do work over at Cook County and Providence, and I tell them, you know, if you control your diabetes, you probably won't get glaucoma. You won't have to deal with gout. You won't have to deal with, you know, hyperthyroid. I mean, this is what happens to people. It's like one catches the next, catches the next, catches the next. So all these minerals are very important. And if I may put this out there too to our viewing audience, America's soil is very mineral depleted. And it has been for quite some time. And the reason for that is because we have so many pesticide residues in our food chain, you know, that we just dump on our soil to keep all those bugs off there. It increases productivity, increases, you know, longevity of the grain or the fruit or the vegetable, and we're eating that stuff. And that's displacing your minerals as well. So not only are these foods mineral deficient, but you're bringing in aluminum and mercury, which is sprayed on our foods, you know, as a binding agent to keep those pesticide residues on there if it rains, and you end up ingesting that, and that displaces your minerals even more.
My goodness.
Oh, gross,
My goodness,
huh?
something else for me to go to bed and think about tonight. Thank you very
anything I
much.
can
But
cheer
there's
you
a,
up
there's a
with?
solution. You see, here's how it works. We get people like yourself and myself and our viewing audience healthy, get them good hair. And so when we just cut an excess of hair, put it in the soil, so you get a good minerals. Yep, I've solved the problem.
Take some take your nails and your
Take your
toenail
nails and-
clippings, put it back. Yes.
Deborah, overview time for hypoglycemia and diabetes and
Boy.
our special message that you always leave us with.
Oh, you know what? Realize that you can affect a change. That's the first thing I would tell people. It's like you are empowered to make a change in your life if you have the desire to do it. Is it going to be easy? Not always, but you know what? With practice, everything becomes easier. Make sure you consume proteins, make sure you get your oils in, you know, and look out for those highly processed carbohydrates, and you'll be on your way. And don't skip feedings. Do not skip breakfast. And start taking accountability for your health. I mean, you just need to do that today because no one's going to babysit your medications. You're going to go to a different specialist for each problem you have. They're giving you different drugs. Some of those medications you're taking may be causing the symptom that's creating the next problem. So you have to babysit yourself, you know, kind of take care of yourself. Treat the baby like a baby. That's what I say. I tell
That's
people,
wonderful.
if you had a baby, would you starve it for 6 hours? You know, your body still needs to be fueled every couple hours.
I hear you. As we do a closing, and so much more I'd love to ask you, but Barbara, what advice can you give our viewing audience to take home and into the grocery stores, et cetera, et cetera?
Just to be prepared, go to the store with a list and just plan out for the week what you're going to be eating and what your needs are going to be. And it really gets a lot simpler after you kind of get that down pat and understand what you really need to be shopping for and eating.
Well, I thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And sharing with us.
Thanks,
It's
Barbara.
always a pleasure. And I'll tell you, this is what 24 is now compared to what I was at 24, which you never would have gotten a list or anything else. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you. I'm your host, Kurt Hill.